Welcome to Level with Emily. This episode features a conversation with multi-instrumentalist Kristin Naigus. Now, Kristin has performed on dozens and dozens of game soundtracks, including some film and TV. But after literally years of hearing composers talk about her and years of hearing her playing in so many of my favorite video game soundtracks, I finally decided to have her on Level, and I'm so glad we had this conversation. It was so great talking with her. I do list in the very early moments of our conversation, I list a fraction of her credits, and it's a very long list that I don't want to list right away now and then again in just a couple minutes. So sit tight to hear the insane list of soundtracks that she's performed on. And again, I only talk about a fraction of them in that moment. But anyway, Kristin's primary instruments are oboe and English horn, but she plays dozens and dozens of instruments, some in the traditional Western world like flute, clarinet, bassoon, saxophone, but also other instruments like penny whistles, duduk. She plays, panpipes, all kinds of other world instruments, ocarina. So in this YouTube version, we don't put music, which is a bummer because it's just amazing to hear her play all these instruments. So check out the audio podcast so that you can hear those things, and you can get the audio podcast wherever you listen to your other podcasts. So join us on Discord to talk about this and other episodes. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel. That'd be great. And then you won't miss our videos that we post a few times a week. And please do become a patron if you're able to support us financially. You can learn more about that at patreon.com/level. All right, here we go with multi-instrumentalist Kristin Naigus. Well, thank you again. I've been literally wanting to do this for years. And I think probably hearing, oh, that's Kristin for the billionth time, I was like, yeah, I have to. So it's just been so fun to hear you over the years, and to every year it seems like someone new is like, Kristin is my musical soulmate. And I love that. So thanks for that.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Like I said, I've gotten to sit and listen to you talk to all my friends, and now I get to join their ranks.
Exactly. Exactly. So, just introduce yourself, and then we'll just kind of, I think, hit the ground running with all kinds of fun things to talk about. But go ahead and just tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah. My name is Kristin Naigus. I currently live in Orlando, Florida, and up until recently used to start this by saying I'm an oboist, which I am. I play oboe and English horn in a bunch of orchestras, maybe half dozen or so around the state of Florida. And I record all the woodwinds for video games and TV and other various projects remotely.
Yeah, and that's incredible, and we're going to get into all of that. But, just what's a woodwind? I'm a trumpet player, so I take these things for granted. But can you kind of explain what that means when you say you play woodwinds?
Woodwind, as in an instrument that produces sound by air vibrating through it. Of course, you can say wind that encompasses both woodwinds and brass because you both are blowing air through an instrument. But I'm talking about the flutes and the reeds. In this case, you can see a bunch behind me anyway.
There are. I love the bassoon, rando bassoon, a clarinet, and is that the English horn there?
That is the English horn. The oboe is behind it. I was using these about 12 hours ago, so I didn't put them away.
Okay. So, I'm the first time I ever heard you, I didn't know that I was hearing you, but looking back in your credits, I'm like, oh my God, Lara Croft in the Temple of Osiris. Are you kidding me? That was ages ago, right?
It was.
And I'm just gonna, let me see. I neglected to pull up my list of questions here. I'm just gonna, just for funsies, read some of your credits, if you don't mind. Uh-huh. Because this cracks me up. All right. And this is a fraction. This is like maybe a third. I don't know. So Lara Croft, Temple of Osiris, Origami 1 and 2, Abzu, Farpoint, various Minecraft mythology projects, the Egyptian one, the Norse one, the Chinese one, Moss 1 and 2, Darksiders Genesis, Hades, The Pathless, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Immortals Phoenix Rising, Ambition and Minuet and Power, Chicory: A Colorful Tale, Psychonauts 2, Return to Monkey Island, Multiverse, Horizon Forbidden West. And again, that's just some of them. So that's insane. I mean, where did it start for you?
Where did it start? I mean, it started with me always wanting to be a soundtrack musician, as opposed to my friends in university who were there to learn how to take auditions and become part of a symphony orchestra, which is generally what they set you up to do. You finish school, you start taking auditions wherever they end up being, and then you compete for one chair with 50 other people who show up, and then you hopefully move there and start your new job, which is great. I love playing in orchestras, but I always loved soundtracks the most, movies, TV, video games, everything. So when I was, frustrated in school that no one would really have an answer to the question, how do you do that besides move to LA? And that's not something I could do. I was just making covers by myself for fun. I thought, well, if I can't play this music, I'll just, do it for myself. And I had Cakewalk Home Studio, which my parents got for both myself and my brother just for fun. Then I would sequence MIDIs and add free sound fonts to them, and then record with a little bad computer mic some of my instruments, mostly just my oboe, because I didn't have all that much when I was in school as far as extra instruments. I had the oboe and the English horn. And I would upload them. I started uploading them around 2014, I guess, 2015. No, even earlier than that, more like 2012, to YouTube. And so two things happened at once when I started putting covers on YouTube. The composers of the original music started finding them and reaching out. And then fans of the music itself also reached out, and we became friends, internet friends, pen pals. It was a lot smaller back then, and started inviting me to the festivals that are out there, MagFest. I don't think I did Game Sound Con for a while, but mostly just MagFest. And we can get to, you're mentioning Temple of Osiris, which is an opportunity I got because I went to my first MagFest.
Oh, wow.
And it all comes down to meeting people who like video game music and eventually had a use for one single remote live instrument on their project.
Which it turns out is dozens upon dozens upon dozens of people who need that. So
yes, now especially, which is nice.
Right, fortuitous. I mean, to me, you were uniquely set up to do those things, a decade ago. Like you said, it was a much smaller crowd then of people doing that. And I have a lot of things to say about that, but also you were obviously uniquely set up to do that during the pandemic, where a lot of people suddenly were like, oh my God, I can't record my trumpet at home or whatever. And you're like, well, I can record these 76 instruments at home. And so that's interesting. That's like some technological foresight that you had.
Right. Yeah. By the time the pandemic hit, I was already doing this for several years. And so nothing really changed except for more people needing remote musicians, which was great. Whereas everyone else either had to start to figure out on their own how to do this and go through all the same research and trial and error that I did, or they were hesitant to, try any of it. I don't want to record. I want to do everything live. I miss playing live, which is completely legitimate because, I missed it too. My whole orchestra career was wiped out for the better part of a year. Right.
And before we get back to games, what orchestras do you play in?
Oh my gosh. If it's an orchestra around the state of Florida, I'm probably in it, or at least have subbed in it. So I have the Ocala Symphony in Ocala, Florida, Gainesville Orchestra in Gainesville, Florida, the Orlando Philharmonic, the Space Coast Symphony, the Brevard Symphony. I do extra gigs anywhere from Jacksonville down to Miami. Sometimes when a show will come through, whether it's the Zelda Symphony, Pokemon Symphony, when those were a thing, or someone like Johnny Mathis will be in town in a couple cities and they need the local band to supplement his core players. I'll get called for that. Wow. So it's a variety.
Yeah, no kidding. So was oboe your first instrument? I would find that hard to believe. It was, seriously. Yes. You never played piano, you didn't play clarinet first. It was straight to the freaking oboe.
Straight to the oboe, yeah.
I love how you took out the freaking. No, I mean, because it's a very difficult instrument to play. I mean, it just is, right?
Yeah, although no one told me that when I started.
Right. exactly.
Yeah, the short version of that, I mean, I had no interest in the piano. I then learned enough of it in college because you had to. But I wanted to play the flute. It was pretty, and it was also the only instrument I knew, pretty much. And my mom, who played the flute through college, said, no, you can't do that because there are too many flute players. And I guess she pictured me just like not surviving very well in a group of 20 flute players. Yeah. And so my parents sat me down. I sort of vaguely remember this, sat me down as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, whatever I was, with recordings of different instruments. And I picked out the sound of the oboe. I said, I like that one. And they said, okay, sure, you can play the oboe. And as luck would have it, a Detroit Symphony oboe player lived 3 minutes from our house. And she was taking beginner students, which at this point, I don't know if I could. So that worked out pretty well. I started right on oboe, and my middle school band director was a bassoon player. So we were allowed to start on oboe, bassoon, something like that. Whereas I think nowadays you can't. You have to start on flute or saxophone and go somewhere else from there.
Right. I do love, though, that there is a flute in the background. So clearly you still kind of got your way.
Yes, joke's on my parents because now I play every day.
Right. Well, I mean, a lot of those instruments share fingerings, or at least share certain halves of fingerings, right? Yeah,
there are similar fingerings, although bassoon and clarinet are some outliers because they get real strange. Yeah. And also, I might point out that flute is the flute that my mom played in college.
Oh, no kidding.
And the clarinet was my dad's.
Oh, amazing.
They both had them fixed up for me for Christmas, and there they are.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So after oboe, I think oboists, if you go far enough, you're bound to learn English horn because that's a very common thing for oboes to double on. But that's if my memory serves, that's kind of where it usually ends with oboists. It's like oboe and English horn. You don't see oboists lugging a flute around or a bassoon. And of course, not like a penny whistle or a duduk or anything. So so where did it go after you learned those instruments?
Yeah, it's usually not the oboe players that are the doublers because we have enough on our plate with this instrument. It's so difficult and so high maintenance. And a lot of the times we're satisfied with this instrument and specializing on and dedicating our lives to it, which is great. And I don't think I ever want to give up the sort of identity that is being an oboe player. I put so much work into it. And my favorite instrument of all time is the English horn. So if I could only play one for the rest of my life, it would be that one. I was obsessed with it the moment that I started playing the oboe. I wanted to play the English horn. And my parents were like, we just got you an oboe. Oops, they got my headphones. But that carried me through most of actual college because you don't have time to do any other instruments unless you're planning on going into music education, in which case you get to do the, saxophone 101 and get basic lessons on all of them. But at the same time as, being an oboe student, I always had an interest in playing other instruments or, at least listening to other instruments because I like how they all sound. I thought it would be really cool to not be limited to just one instrument and get to play a bunch of sounds. And a lot of it also stems from my listening to soundtracks that had instruments I couldn't necessarily identify off the bat. And I would go, I don't know what that is, but I want to make that sound. And that would lead to lots of research and studying and listening to more music and everything. But as soon as I was out of college, like I said, no one could tell me not to do it.
Right.
So I kind of started picking up the instruments from there. I already had a couple, penny whistles and a duduk, because if you're an oboe player, that's sort of a natural instrument to gravitate towards because, double reeds. Yeah. No, they're very different double reeds, and I don't have to make the reeds for the duduk, fortunately.
I love how, go on.
I was just saying it, the instrument collection kind of started growing exponentially after that.
Now, oboe, you mentioned making the reeds, which that is a very big part. Like you guys have reed making class in college and stuff, and probably before that if you're really into it, right? So it's like, it's you can't be an oboe player without that piece of it, right? And bassoon too, correct?
Correct.
That's very common for bassoon players. I assume you make your own bassoon reeds too.
No.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
I do not make bassoon reeds because, one, I don't play it nearly enough to justify the expensive equipment purchases and all that time. So I buy my bassoon reeds from my colleagues in orchestra because they know what they're doing, and they last a lot longer than oboe reeds anyway. So I've got a few that I can rotate, and if I ever need a new one, I'll just, call up my friend and say, hey, here's some money.
That's awesome. I didn't realize they use different equipment. I mean, I knew that the reed itself, the actual wooden reed part, is bigger on a bassoon, but it didn't occur to me that they would have different machinery to make them.
Oh, yes. Every double reed instrument has its own set of equipment because the reeds are different sizes. So you need the machines to fit the cane.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
So if you play English horn, that's another set of, machinery. And oboe d'amore is different. Piccolo oboe is different. Bassoon, contra, everything else.
Wow. I mean, I knew that they were different sizes, but it didn't. Wow, that's amazing. That's a commitment for sure. Now, on your website, you list, I think it's 14. Yeah, you list 14 traditional Western symphonic instruments that you play. So that's, oboe, flute, bassoon, English horn, oboe d'amore, which you just mentioned, and bass oboe, things that
sometimes,
things that wouldn't be. I mean, some of those are kind of unusual, but they'd be found in a Western orchestra in some way, shape, or form. But then when you go to the page of the instruments you play that aren't a part of that, including like penny whistle, right? Because you don't really hear a penny whistle in Beethoven or anything like that. But it's like there's like 3 dozen. Do you know how many instruments you play currently?
I have not counted in a while. I mean, there are a couple different numbers. There's the number of individual instruments and then the total, physical flutes I have because, I have a million penny whistles in different keys, a million bonsuri in different keys. So I don't actually know.
Is there one that you, I'm sorry that some of these questions are really rudimentary, but I'm just so curious. Like, is there any one that you're like, I hope I don't have to play that one anytime soon or ever again, or...
I mean, I can't say, there's no instrument that I would own and not want to play, obviously. There are a couple that I cannot play. And whenever anyone asks me, to record it for them, I'll say, no, I'm a work in progress. Here is an actual player of this instrument you need to go to. Like shakuhachi is probably my number one. I wish I could play it so badly. It's very difficult. I need a teacher. I will do that eventually. But I cannot play it. And I don't pretend that I can at all. Yes. And the Western instruments, I mean, it depends on day to day. Sometimes I have bad clarinet days and I just don't want to look at it. It's so different from oboe. The voicing is just still foreign to me.
Really? In terms of the way the keys lie on the instrument, or?
Keys, but mostly voicing as in the way you position your embouchure in your mouth and your throat and everywhere. You have to physically set yourself up to play it. It feels a lot different than playing the oboe does.
I gotcha. And that was another question I had. I interviewed the Game Brass a few months ago about their newest album, Brass Effect. Those nerds. And I love them so much.
Need to come up with the next pun for their next album.
Exactly. It's a thing. And one of the Dannies, there are 2 Dannies, but one of the Dannies plays horn and trombone. And it can be really difficult to go back and forth on instruments because when you play one instrument, you're developing a set of muscles for that instrument. And he said it took him about 10 years to really, really nail the sound between the two, which I'm sure it probably didn't take him that long, but maybe it did. I don't know. But I'm just curious, what kinds of changes did you notice in your oboe playing, or did you notice anything, or how do you work with that part of moving between all these instruments that do require different sets of facial muscles to play, and maybe different, all the things?
All the things. Yeah, that's also a work in progress for me. I will not compromise any of my oboe English horn playing whatsoever. So that is always first and foremost what I work on. I mean, obviously what I do here, I have to play a whole lot of oboe and English horn. It's the other instruments that is a challenge to juggle. One, because, of course, like you said, the embouchure is different. The sets of muscles you use are different. And second of all, I don't know which one I'm going to need from week to week.
Right.
Because I get, recording questions and gigs out of nowhere. There are only a few consistent recordings that I will know are approaching within a week or so. And so I'll tell myself, okay, I really need to start playing some more flute, so I'm ready for this. Otherwise, the tone is noticeably different. Especially something like flute. If I don't keep those chops up, I sound more beginnerish and less like my colleagues in the orchestra, which is not where I want to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's sort of a matter of picking from day to day. Okay, what am I going to focus on? I guess, long tones and exercises and all those fun things are a part of it. But I don't have a super clear answer because I'm not 10 years into, seriously doubling on all of these instruments yet. I can't tell you if I've succeeded or not. Part of it might be that I still don't, I'm still not, skilled enough to be able to tell if I sound okay or not, which I hope that's not always the case. But I'm not stopping at this point, so it's too bad.
Yeah. No, you definitely shouldn't. You definitely shouldn't. And I think, it's interesting that you say, I'm not willing to let my oboe or English horn playing change in any way. That's your main deal. Do you have time or any desire to teach, as many symphony musicians do, right? I mean,
right.
But you're not that.
I am not that. And I used to teach. I probably more out of necessity or because people just assume that you should. In school, when I had that time, I would do my classes, and then I could use my professor's office as my studio. And I was not very good at it, for one thing. I enjoyed when students would come in and they'd figure something out or they'd have a good time playing. But because I was not good at it, I realized I did not want to be the reason that someone else did not want to practice or play the oboe or want to go into lessons. I think that's much better suited for my friends who are good at that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And half the time, I don't even know what I'm doing. So once we get past a certain level on the instrument of skill, I am sort of clueless because I don't spend my time fine-tuning my Mozart concerto or my Strauss or anything else.
Yeah.
So after a certain point, it's like, I don't know, sound fine, I guess. Go practice some more. So yeah, no, I don't teach in that more traditional sense. I do love, at this point, talking to students. I've done a whole lot of that in the last couple of years, actually. My professor colleagues would have me come in and tell students about, my career path and everything and how I got to this point. I'm great at teaching reed making because that's more objective, steps and cool. Everything. There's less room for, personal interpretation of how to make a reed. Like either it's working or it's not.
Right.
So I also did that as part of my grad school studies. I was a TA. And so every Friday we would have reed class and everyone else would come into the office and I'd teach that all day.
Nice. So Kristin, is that how you ended up in Florida with school?
Kind of. I went to University of Michigan for my undergrad, and that's also where I grew up, is Michigan. And at that point, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
When I was finishing up my undergrad, my dad got a job with Disney. And so he had to make a decision right then and there. Do you want to move to Florida or California? And he picked Florida. And so then I was faced with a decision. Do I stay in Michigan where I have absolutely no money? Because I was a college student. Or do I move to Florida where I have no friends? And I ended up picking Florida because at the same time, the University of Florida oboe professor was looking for a TA. And it was a fully funded with a stipend position. And so my plans of auditioning for USC were sort of gone in an instant. And I ended up down there because they gave me money.
Yeah.
And I mean, it ended up working out pretty well. After I graduated there, I started getting into the circle of local orchestras and everything and working for Disney and all that.
Oh, wow. So are your parents, obviously they're musical, are they professional musicians or just... No. Okay.
No, neither of them are professional. They're music appreciators. And of course, like I said, they were in band through college. And neither of them are professional. And they ended up with the two professional musician children. So
okay.
Don't know how they feel about
because you
that.
said your brother
Yes.
was working. Now, what does he do?
He is a professor of horn at the University of Georgia.
Oh, good Lord. Another really difficult instrument.
Yes. The two arguably hardest instruments to start on. He started on piano and then went to horn.
Okay.
But yep, oboe and horn.
Amazing. I love that. Do you at all remember the piece of music that you heard the oboe in that you're like, I like that instrument. I want to play the oboe?
I don't actually. Okay. I wish I did.
Yeah, I'm sure it was
some orchestral excerpt. Maybe I can ask my parents someday, see if they remember at all.
Yeah.
But of course, at that same time, I was listening to a lot of soundtracks. And so I would always pick out the oboe after that and go, I like this. I want to play that music.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember just growing up loving soundtracks as well, never feeling like that would be my career path, which is funny because it sort of is now in a big way, but not the way that you do, right? So what are some of the soundtracks that you remember from childhood that really made you want to be a part of that musically?
I mean, when I first started oboe, my absolute favorite composer was James Horner.
Okay.
And one of my favorite scores of him was actually from the movie Balto, 1995, I think.
Okay.
Something like that. But it was my introduction to his music and, themes, repeated themes throughout his score. I just absolutely love that. And he used a lot of oboe, English horn in his works. And then, of course, a lot of Disney scores I was always a giant fan of. So the golden age of Disney movies and their soundtracks, and Alan Menken and Jerry Goldsmith and everything. So I listened to a whole lot of that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And then when it comes to, playing in the symphony, clearly you still love doing that.
Of course.
And I mean, oboe and English horn, they're just so good. They're so good. And sometimes I say that's what I would play if I go back. Sometimes I do say clarinet, I'm sorry to say. But
that's a good instrument.
Horn too, obviously. Like I, as a trumpet player, often played horn, sounding like a trumpet player. But it's just like oboe and English horn are so wonderful, and there's so many amazing examples through like so many eras of music, right? Like oboe's been around for a long time. Oboe d'amore, all of those things. Oboe d'amore, and do you have any favorites that you love playing? Like when Ravel gets whipped out or something like that? I mean, are you just like, yes?
Oh, I mean, it's so cliche, but whenever New World Symphony gets programmed, I get really, really excited. I've played that so many times at this point with so many different groups, but it never gets old.
Big English horn solo in the second slow movement of the Dvorak 9, yes.
That's right. And that was also one of those things that I had a, oboe excerpt CD when I was 12, and I listened to it on repeat. And it was just this gorgeous recording of this solo. And I don't remember who performed it at that point, but I wanted to do it. Scheherazade is another big favorite oboe solo. The Rodrigo guitar concerto, back to English horn, that second movement is a giant solo, and I've played it a couple times. My favorite piece to play just overall is The Planets, and I did that a couple weeks ago with Orlando Phil.
Nice.
And at this point, whenever The Planets is programmed, they ask me to do bass oboe. So that's bringing up the bass oboe again. It's, again, why I have it on my website is something I can do with enough advance notice, because you have to rent that thing.
Oh, I was going to say that must be the same thing with the oboe d'amore, right? That's why you have an asterisk next to those?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I have two friends who own a d'amore, and so I never have to get one myself because they never play it. They just bought it and it sits around in a closet. So I can easily call one of them up and say, hey, I've got this gig, can I borrow it? And they let me do that.
Yeah. Tell us the difference, if you would, between oboe and oboe d'amore. Are they in different keys?
Yes, oboe d'amore is in every way exactly halfway between an oboe and an English horn.
Oh, all right.
So oboe is in C, English horn's in F, oboe d'amore is in A. It looks like a baby English horn. It has a little tiny vocal at the top and the pear-shaped bell, but it's smaller.
Okay.
And it sounds like a cross between the two of them as well.
Yeah.
Slightly darker oboe.
Yep. A little bit warmer than an oboe, a little bit brighter than an English horn. And I think, if you poll anyone who says, I love English horn, they're going to say because of that full, warm, reedy sound that you can get from it, right?
Right. The darker melancholy tone. I mean, that's why I always loved it even more than oboe.
Wow. But yeah, it's kind of like you can't really be just a professional English hornist, can you? right?
A very, very select few people can, because some of the bigger orchestras will have an audition for the English horn chair.
Wow.
And so that's all that person has to do is show up and play the English horn parts. Whereas
Amazing.
in most orchestras, you'll have your second chair oboe doubling on English horn.
Right. Right. Amazing.
But yeah, a couple of people can do just English horn. And that's why whenever I'd take lessons from someone like Carolyn Hove, the English horn player of the LA Phil, that was her specialty. And so she would have only English horn master classes, and we'd play only English horn excerpts, and it was great.
Love that. Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. Clearly, you must have had some kind of good relationship with your first teacher, or something that really kept you going, huh?
I mean, I like to think so. Yeah, my first teacher, the Detroit Symphony, actually English horn player of Detroit Symphony, but she also played some oboe. And the funny part is that none of my actual teachers played the English horn, because none of my teachers after her played the English horn, and then she didn't teach me English horn because I was too young. So
right. Oh, how funny.
So I never really got any proper English horn lessons until I was out of college and did the external master classes. But yeah, so she obviously saw some potential in me to keep me as a student for a while. Although there was a period in around 7th or 8th grade where I got temporarily kicked out of lessons because I didn't want to practice. And I was just wasting her time. So I had to take a break and reflect on my life choices. Eventually I came back. But yeah, I got to actually reconnect with her after 20 some years, very recently at the International Double Reed Society Conference. And she's happy that I'm still playing and succeeding relatively okay. Yeah. And then my band director, my 6th grade band director, the bassoon player too, I got to see her for the first time in 20 some years when I went to Michigan last month.
Wow.
And same thing with her. Yeah. She encouraged a whole lot of people to stay in band. We had a really fun time playing good music and really positive learning environment. So
So, I asked you about, some of the ones you maybe aren't as fond of, but I'm curious, especially of the non-symphonic instruments, your penny whistles and the show, which is a Japanese instrument that I'm so fascinated with. And I was like, oh my God, you play the show. It's so cool. So what are some of those instruments that you really have just felt so grateful to be playing and have in your musical life?
Yeah, well, you picked out, a couple of the top ones right away. I love the penny whistles. They make me very happy to play. There's no reason, or there's no way to be sad really when you're playing a penny whistle. Even if you're playing some sort of melancholy air, it's just it's so nice. And the low whistles too. I just love their tone. The show is an instrument that I of course, rarely get to play because I do not specialize in traditional Japanese court music or anything. But I first got my first heavy dose of it with the Okami soundtrack, which is my favorite video game of all time. And I would just hear it in the background of half of these tracks and thought, this is the most gorgeous ethereal sound ever. I'm obsessed with it. I want to learn more about this instrument. And there are stores that will import instruments and sell them to people like me. So I eventually picked one up so I could just, enjoy it by myself rather than necessarily contribute to soundtracks with it. Especially because it's not tuned in 440 either. It's A430, so you have to do some pitch adjusting in software to blend it with Western instruments.
No kidding.
But yeah, love that one. I'm looking around my room trying to remind myself of what I have.
Is the show? Do you have the show in there?
It's in that cabinet back there. So
do you mind pulling it out? Is that a problem?
It would take a few minutes to bring it out. I can do it
Don't
later though.
Don't worry about it. It's okay.
Sorry. Yeah. If I
not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
Not at all. Open up that cabinet, it's just a pile of cases and stuff, but I can bring it out later. The Fujara, which is the Slovakian overtone flute, my largest, which being as tall as I am, is a really fun instrument to play.
Wow. Is it? It must be not transverse. How it must be.
I can show you a tiny one.
Yeah, do it.
By tiny, I mean only like 4 feet long instead of 6.
Wow.
This is my smallest one.
Okay.
So you've got the fipple, like a recorder or a whistle right here.
Yeah.
And then the mouthpiece is right here. Your 3-finger holes are here, and it's all based off of the overtone system. So you get your whole scale through that.
Amazing.
And then, yeah, my largest one is, twice as tall as this one.
Incredible. And were those imports as well?
Yes, a maker in Slovakia.
Okay.
I commissioned him separately 3 different times. And the first one was specifically for a video game, and the other 2 were because I wanted more keys. So they've only been sort of used here and there so far.
Mm-hmm. Which score did you commission the first one for?
Darksiders Genesis.
Oh, Gareth Coker,
yes,
right? And
that's right.
You've worked with Gareth a number of times, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Immortal Phoenix Rising. Are those the 3 that you've worked with him on? Oh, yes, and the Minecraft stuff.
The Minecraft stuff, yes.
Yeah.
And almost everything he's been working on since Ori 2 and everything.
That's very cool.
I have some sort of flutes hiding in the background, at least.
Yeah, because I imagine for something especially like Ori, you probably played many instruments for him, yes?
I think it was 21 instruments for Ori.
Oh, my God.
So most of them were sort of the soundscape instruments. So I did essentially a whole sample library for him, personalized Ori sample library of a whole bunch of instruments, playing different phrases and different keys and different rhythms and fun patterns and stuff. We did have an entire session for more Fuyara, where I just got to do what I wanted.
Nice.
And then the others were melody instruments, which were sometimes added sort of towards the end of the score production. And sometimes they were proof of concept, where he would draft up a piece and want that one live instrument to help sell the track to the devs and show them, hey, yeah, this is what it's going to be. It's going to sound good. You're going to like it. Mm-hmm, here it is.
Yeah. And then, other composers that I mentioned, even though I didn't mention their names, but games of them, obviously Jason Graves, another big one. We just talked about Moss 2. We'll get to Austin in a minute, but you've worked with Jason on Moss 1 and 2.
Yes.
And then what other Jason games have you done? Have there been other Jason games
There have been a few.
Okay.
A few tracks from other projects of his, but it was sort of here's a track, record it, there it goes. Mm-hmm. I hope he doesn't get mad at me for not remembering exactly what it was, but Moss 1 and 2 were sort of the big ones. Yeah. Very, very special games.
Yeah, and again, probably several instruments that you played for each, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, mostly the higher woodwinds. Although Moss 2 had a few extra instruments. We added the bass clarinet and the bassoon.
Oh, that's right.
Which you talked about already, so I don't have to repeat myself. And the penny whistles.
Yep, the penny whistles. So good. Oh, my God, I love that. And then Austin, of course. Now, that episode we just released, you and I are talking only 3 or 4 days after that episode got released, but... or was that McLean recent? I can't even remember what's come out recently. Austin has come out recently, I will say that.
Yeah, Aliens.
Aliens,
because he only just got to release that soundtrack properly.
Right. And, the oboe work in there is absolutely gorgeous. And that's something I've maybe neglected to say this whole time, is that it's and I think this is very much worth saying, is that it's not just that 10 years ago you happened to be this mediocre musician putting up video game covers. You're like, you have such a beautiful tone and such, just good musicianship, right? Like the way you play a lyrical line is just really beautiful and powerful. And so I wanted to make sure that gets said.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. And in Aliens, much like all of those scores I listed, you can hear that really, really well. But I love the story that Austin tells in that interview about how you sent him a video a decade ago of you playing Nascence, the Journey theme, on English horn, and he didn't see it for whatever reason. And then he found you somehow, or I can't remember exactly how that story concludes, but just that you eventually got connected, and that, you've worked on many projects with him as well now. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd need a whole episode just to talk about Austin and all of his projects and all of his adventures. No, I don't remember at all him not discovering it. In fact, I remember that he almost instantly found it as soon as I tweeted it and tagged him, because he was on Twitter pretty often. But I think he didn't start talking to me that much until later on. I did a cover from Horn, a mobile game that I guess not very many people paid attention to. And I liked that one because, I mean, it starred in Ocarina. So how common is that?
Did I see Ocarina on your list? Do you have Ocarina?
I do have Ocarinas, yes.
I love that you put kazoo on there too. That's a nice touch.
It counts. I'm pretty sure I've recorded it professionally. But yeah, I don't get asked for the ocarinas too often because they're so heavily tied to Zelda that people are sort of shying away from using them in video games.
Bummer.
But they come in different sizes and shapes and everything. So they're very cool instruments. I like when I do get to play them.
Yeah. So you did a horn cover, and that's maybe perhaps when your professional relationship with Austin got kicked off?
I think so. That sounds about right. I mean, this was 10 years ago, so something like that.
I know. And I mean, I don't even know all the Austin projects, but I do know that Abzu, I never get it right. Abzu,
I guess.
Yeah, that's very heavily you, isn't it? I mean, that's a very hardcore oboe situation happening in that soundtrack.
Yeah, to this day, I'm just shocked that he wanted to so quickly trust me with that soundtrack, because that pitch for Abzu happened not too, late after my YouTube covers. He had reached out and said, so I want to pitch this track to the devs of this game. I would like to have a live oboe instead of a sample oboe. Could you record one line? And this was in 2013.
Okay.
And I was just frozen in my seat. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is actually happening. And I said, yeah, I'll do this. And I recorded the line and sent it back. And months later, he reaches out again. We obviously weren't talking all that much. And he said, oh, by the way, they liked it. Would you like to play oboe for the entire game? And that's how that happened. And he continued on to tell me that the oboe would function in Abzu. It didn't have a name at that point, much the same way that the cello did in Journey. Okay. So that is what it ended up being.
Yeah, it is.
At that point, I decided, oh gosh, I have to upgrade my equipment, because I was using my my $10 earbuds from Target, my little built-in computer mic, and I thought, oh no, I need to actually sound okay for this.
Wow, you still were using your computer mic for even those covers?
Yeah, it was mono. It was terrible. I thought it was okay at the time, and apparently other people did too. But it was finally time to get some real recording equipment.
Now, how much, of course, again, as a music student, I remember being constantly encouraged to record myself and listen to myself back in practice, which I never once did. Never.
Same here.
Never. Now, I mean, for radio, I hear myself all the time, and there is no question that it made me better at interviewing and better at being on the air and all those things. So yeah, they're right, but I still never did it. So when you started doing that, I mean, because obviously you have to do that now. You're probably hearing yourself all the time, right? So what was that adjustment like for you, and what did you learn about yourself from doing that?
Yeah, and I was finally learning what I should have back when they told me to record myself, and I did not. Although, to be fair, it was much more of a pain back then, because I had to, check out a Zoom recorder or whatever, a mini disc recorder, and go to some sort of practice room and play that, and then get that file back and do all that nonsense. And now I can just push record and instantly hear it on my computer. But yeah, no, it's taught me a lot about how I phrase things, for one thing. It's sort of validated what other previous teachers have said about my playing. I mean, I can immediately think of some who have said, I don't think you're expressive enough on this, or your vibrato's doing this, and I didn't really hear it. I only had their word. But now that I can hear it for myself, it's like, oh yeah, they were actually right about all this stuff they were telling me. I should have listened. And of course, it's a great listening exercise and tuning exercise, which is something that's not always easy to do in a live setting. And it's kind of nice when I have a backing track of, like, the London Philharmonia or something, because they know what they're doing. Right. So if anything sounds bad, it's definitely me.
Fantastic. You mentioned vibrato, and this is another thing that brings up all this instrument switching, because instruments have their own idiosyncrasies with how they're expected to be heard too, right? Like oboe, you expect to hear a lot of really vibrant vibrato, right? I mean, it's just a part of the instrument. Or even trumpet. French horn, not so much. You don't play horn, so that's okay. But also clarinet is a really good example of one. You just don't really hear people do that. Depends on the style and all kinds of things. But, in an orchestra setting, it's unusual. So, I guess talk to me a little bit about that. It's not just learning how to make a sound and play the right fingers in the right place. It's like getting those characteristics right too. And I assume that's one of the things that might be hardest about shakuhachi, but I'd just love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I do like clarinet because I don't have to worry about vibrato. I mean, some people do add it in, and I actually have used it very, very sparingly in some tracks before, like in Chicory. I do recall putting in just very, very subtle vibrato sometimes, but for the most part, I don't have to. A lot of that, again, is deciding what kind of sound you personally like. There's so much that's subjective about instrument tone and phrasing and those idiosyncrasies and stuff. So if I like what my friend sounds like with a certain wide vibrato or narrow vibrato, I will try and imitate that to the best of my ability. And there's a lot that just comes with time and practicing. Even like the way you produce vibrato is different from flute to oboe. So figuring that out has been, its own adventure.
Right, because with oboe, you can use your jaw more, right? Is that, or how do you do it with oboe?
It's mostly diaphragm, some throat, and flute, it's very much throat vibrato. Saxophone is jaw vibrato.
Okay. Yeah, so see, that's all these different instruments have different ways of producing a similar effect even, so yeah.
Yep, and duduk is another, you use your jaw for that, and you puff out your cheeks when you play, which I don't do on any other instrument.
Right.
So
why do you think, so does that just create the sound in a different way? It makes a different chamber for the air, so it does, yeah, amazing. Yeah.
And then the instruments where you circular breathe are another deal altogether.
Ooh, name some of those.
I mean, duduk, you're supposed to circular breathe.
Really?
And I am not good at that. I can do it on oboe, and that's about it.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't even very well do it on trumpet. Sometimes it depended on the range and all kinds of things. But circular breathing, that's complex. And duduk, it seems like such a... I don't mean this negatively, but like a violent vibrato, right? It's such a wide situation.
It is wide.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing.
There's always so much to work on all the time.
That's
but
true.
That keeps it interesting.
I'm sure it does. Would you say, Kristin, that you play oboe or English horn every day?
No.
Okay.
I don't, and whether or not I should is another issue altogether.
Well, yeah, we don't have to go there, but yeah.
A lot of my friends do. I am convinced that some of the reasons that I love all the instruments right now so much is because I don't force myself to play them every day. I take breaks. I switch around. I let myself, if I don't want to make reeds or play the oboe, like I'll just go do something else.
Yeah.
And so I have avoided a lot of the bitterness that I see in other musicians who are symphony players with one horn and day-to-day Beethoven.
Yeah.
Some people, that's what they're made for, and that's great. I'm so happy that there are people that can do that for a living, but I'm not one of them.
Talk to me about some more of the composers that you've worked with that you're, I don't know. Just I know that Lena Raine, you mentioned Chicory, and one of Lena's other games, right?
Moonglow Bay was after Chicory, and also Sackboy. She did a menu track that I got to contribute to, and a few random scattered album tracks as well that I can't remember off the top of my head. But Chicory, of course, was super special to me because it's a puppy with a paintbrush, and those are two things that are right up my alley. And the music is so charming. The game is so charming. I think more people need to give it a chance because on the surface level, it just looks like a coloring book. But it's actually a game about imposter syndrome, which a lot of us can relate to. But anyway, super fun soundtrack. And I had a great time working on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, composers, I mean, Austin and Gareth will pop up pretty much all the time. I can't go to a conference without someone approaching me and talking to me about one of them. Yep. Lena, Jason. I mean, the list is actually pretty endless at this point.
Yeah. Will Roger, you've worked with him a
lot.
Will
Roger, which was technically the very first game release. That was Temple of Osiris.
Yeah.
Because of meeting him at MagFest in 2013 or something. And yeah, that story I like to tell people because it was a matter of just meeting people who like the music you do. It was the last day of MagFest. It was 2 a.m. I had to catch a taxi at like 5 or something ridiculous because I had an early flight. And I heard music coming from a hotel room, and I wandered in, and there was a vibraphone just like in a hotel room. And I thought, okay, this is fun. It's a group of people just standing around playing Zelda music. And at that point, it was my first MagFest. I didn't really have much on me except a little recorder I packed in my bag for who knows what reason. So a couple of friends and I sat down with this random group of people that we sort of invited ourselves into and played Zelda music with them, just jammed for a little while. And I was standing next to the only other woodwind player, was playing a flute. We did not speak a single word to each other, but at the very end, when I had to go, he gave me his business card and said, it was great to meet you. And months later, he messaged me, and it was Will. And he said, hey, you play the oboe, right? I've got this game that I'm working on. It'd be great if you could record some lines. And that's how that happened. Literally just a jam session at MagFest at 2 a.m. Nothing to do with networking or any of the sort. Just having fun.
Right.
And that game was also something I did with, my laptop and a plug-in mic. Wow. And that was it.
Wow.
So yeah, I kind of wish I could go back and redo it with my current setup, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. Wasn't Zelda your first video? Do you remember what you posted first?
It was in my very first YouTube video, Zelda Skyward Sword. It was Fi's theme on like low whistle and oboe or something. I don't remember. Yeah. And then you go back and listen to that. It's like really badly recorded and it's drenched in like free reverb and everything that I thought was great at the time.
Right. Free reverb. I love that. Free verb. Exactly. So what made you choose to cover games and not film at that time? I mean, what kind of, because that's, talk about a really smart decision too. Not that people shouldn't do film covers, but I mean, the video game remix community. Yeah. So how did that happen?
Couple different reasons. One is that overall video game tracks are a lot shorter. So it's a lot easier to express a thought and put that out there. Yeah. Second of all, there were so many choices for tracks that did not have live instruments involved. So it was pretty easy to just take something that I liked and replace the synth or MIDI or whatever it was with a live instrument and go, well, at least now it's different. This is what I wanted to do. I like this one. But also, I'm a gamer. I've always played games. And so, of course, that's always been a part of my, upbringing and my musical tastes and everything. I mean, it started when I was 3 or 4 and my dad got us an Atari. And so we played the old Atari games, and now I've got, way too many consoles for my own good. And I still ignore most of them.
Right? I know. That's always the way, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But also at this point, and at that point when I started, I consumed a lot more games than I did movies, TV, anything else. So I was more emotionally invested in the music too. I kind of still am. So I mean, I love soundtracks and everything, but I'm super happy I ended up over in this corner.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it's a very special corner, and it's like the world's best kept secret, really. Yeah, and so you mentioned in those early years, just like not having the best equipment. I mean, when did that start changing? Did you just start piecing things together? You said your parents helped with the studio, or how did that work?
No, it was, Abzu was when I suddenly had to go, oh, wait a minute, I should probably do something about this little setup. Yeah. Because I managed with Temple of Osiris and maybe a couple small things then and there, but that was a sort of turning point decision where I thought, you know what, I think I do want to commit to recording stuff. And so I had to go through all the researching by myself, which involved Googling, what microphones are good for woodwinds and turning up absolutely nothing.
Really?
Oh, yeah. There's no information really out there, especially not 10, 12 years ago, whatever this was.
Right. Yep.
And so a lot of it was trial and error in picking a nice, moderately priced microphone, which I think the upgrade was an Audio-Technica, which ended up working quite well and everything. And I guess what really did it for me was adding a second microphone so that I was able to record in stereo. And I guess you can't see off screen. I've got the dual mic setup and then a sound shield behind them to sort of get rid of some of the reflections. And that's done me pretty well for a long time.
Wow.
But a lot of trial and error. So it felt nice to be able to help people in recent years who would come to me and go, how do I get started? How do I, do all this? Because then they didn't have to go through the same amount of pain and suffering that I did when I didn't know what was going on.
Right. I mean, because now if you need how to do anything, you just type it into YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
And
endless
like,
resources.
Do that. Yeah. And it's just not that way. I'm trying to think what I was talking about the other day that was something rather obscure. And I was like, I'm sure if I looked it up on YouTube right now, there's probably 7 different choices of videos telling me how to do this, and a decade ago, that was not the case, right?
Exactly. And that helps me with the instruments too, because there's so many tutorials out there. And of course, once you can tell the difference between the legitimate ones and the, not so much. But there's still plenty of people who are masters at their instrument who are providing these free resources, and it's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. Well, Kristin, through this whole chat, the audio podcast version of this chat is going to be just absolutely full of samples of you playing from, everybody's soundtracks and all of those things. So I strongly encourage people to, if you haven't listened to Ori in a minute or any of these things, go back and listen and, pay attention to Kristin's playing. But beyond those things, what are some things about, maybe you, let's start there. What are some things that you really would like people to know about your playing or your career?
Oh, gosh. I didn't know that would be a question.
I know, that's a big question, isn't it? I kind of surprised myself with that one, to be honest.
Right, because usually this is the answer to that. When other people ask, what do you want us to know about your playing? I get to tell them about the video game music and everything.
Right. Well, maybe that's the answer then.
that could be. I mean, mostly I tell people about having a balance of different areas of music and getting to explore everything. Because I have this career that I do because I'm interested in so many different areas of music. And also, like I said, I've been doing a lot of talks with students, and they ask, how do you get into this? And it comes down to making friends with people who like the same music as you do.
Right.
That's really what's gotten me here. So I like to make that point. And I'll think of something really cool and insightful once we're done.
Right. Exactly. You can tweet me or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then with regards to, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the variety is what, gives me life. I love playing new music all the time and getting to record for something that might end up being the favorite music of so many people in the future. And my favorite music too. I love the idea that a lot of my ultimate favorite soundtracks don't exist yet. They have to be written. I can't wait to see what they are.
Well, and also you get insight, right? I mean, I'm sure you have to sign NDAs and stuff to so that you're not
Sometimes
talking
I do,
about these projects. And so you're getting insight into some of these games that everybody can't wait to hear the music. And you're like, I recorded that 6 months ago or something.
That does happen. Yeah. I remember this. In the case of something like Multiverses that came out not too long ago, I looked up the recordings and it was like 1-2 years back. And I remember doing that.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
And they all have different code names at at that time. And it depends on who I'm working for. Sometimes they're more freely giving with information about the games. And other times it's just like, here's the queue. It's labeled M04. I need it back tomorrow.
And then I kind of have the same question, but with regards to oboe and English horn. in music school, oboe gets kicked around a lot of oboe jokes. And I think there's a lot of all kinds of instrument jokes. You can make just as many jokes about trumpet players and horn players and, viola players and whatnot. But but I'm curious what you would like people to know, because, there are a lot of people who hear an oboe and can't say this is an oboe. So, maybe what's something you want people to know about those two very special instruments?
Oh gosh, besides the reed making being a huge time commitment.
Commitment.
All I can say is I encourage people to, take up the instrument they want to play. I don't let other people discourage you from playing something like the oboe or the English horn. It's frustrating to me that nowadays they will try and get you to start on a quote unquote easier instrument like the flute or clarinet or something, which they're fantastic instruments. But if you want to play the oboe.
Right.
There's so many of us. And I mean, we do have the stereotype of the, high strung oboe player, high maintenance, kind of grouchy. But we're, in my experience, at least, a great community because we all picked this frustratingly difficult instrument. So all we have is each other to get through this career. We're very supportive of one another for the most part.
Yes, indeed.
So I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say? I just want to nerd out with you for another hour, but that seems unreasonable.
I can't believe it's over already. We'll have to do this again.
I know. We definitely will. But just, from the bottom of my heart and so many people who have heard you play, thank you for 10 years ago just being like, I'm going to put these up on YouTube, burr, 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 and then just building this illustrious career out of it. It's been such a pleasure to hear your name dropped left and right over the years. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It does seem unreal to me just every single day that I get to do this. And if we had more time, I could easily get into each and every one of my collaborators and how much I absolutely adore them and their music and how grateful I am for them giving me a chance to assist them with their, I mean, these are their big projects, their children or whatnot. And so letting me help with that is something I never thought I would get to do, but here I am. It's just incredible.
Yeah. Well, and two, I don't mean to keep going here, but, I know that they obviously value your input as the professional person on these instruments, being, and many times they probably already are well versed in the capabilities of oboe, but I know that, your expertise on how a line works and doesn't work maybe is really valuable as well.
Yeah, that's something I also like to do. And I encourage composers and young composers that have a question or something to reach out to a player because no one knows better than the person who's playing that instrument. And we're not too scary. I don't expect composers to be born knowing everything about every instrument. I just have so much respect for people who write music and have to navigate all of that. But I have a great time teaching people about, the little details that you might not get in a book that you read at school or something.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, again, thank you for everything and loved talking with you today. And we will definitely do this again. We'll do this again.
So glad we finally got to.
Me too.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay, well, this is an addition because as soon as we hit stop, I heard about another awesome project that you just did. So, tell us about that one.
Yes, I got to record for God of War Ragnarok.
Amazing.
The PlayStation team of composers reached out to me. I guess we were talking about how, I'll record something 6 months, a year, 2 years before it comes out. That was the deal. I don't remember actually when I got to do this. But they contacted me for a 4-hour session, which included maybe a handful, 7-8 cues for the game. And some of them are cutscenes and some of them are diegetic music. So you'll hear like a tavern brawl with recorders playing at the same time. Yes. And that's me.
Awesome. And what other instruments did you play?
It was, recorders and whistles were the primary selections. And then the cutscenes had additional, English horn, alto flute, that sort of thing. Awesome. A couple orchestral colors to add into it.
Okay. Very cool.
But that was a lot. That was a very intense session. Very, very fun though.
Was it intense because it was such a short amount of time or? Yeah,
it was all at once 4 hours and live monitored by the PlayStation team. So I had a whole room of people that I could see on my computer at the same time, and they were listening, and it would go back and forth. Okay, could you do this? Okay, could you try this line again? A little bit more dynamic contrast, or etc.
Wow. Yeah, that'd be almost like a jury in college, right? Where you're standing before the panel and like delivering your solo and getting critiqued by it.
Yes,
amazing.
Except they all seemed very happy with everything that was, being recorded. So it wasn't stressful or anything. It was just very long.
I love the implication that in college they would not have been very happy with what was going on. You're like, yes, except these people were happy with what they were hearing. Like,
yes. You can imagine professors after an entire day of sitting behind a desk listening to juries.
Oh, no, thank you. Oh, just the word, even hearing it not in the same context, that word gives me a stomachache.
Same here.
Yeah. And then you said something else too, and I don't want to presume that we can record about that, but you said you're going to add something to your website next week, which this will post after that. So can we talk about that one too?
Yes. Season 4 of The Dragon Prince on Netflix. That series.
Cool. Okay, see, because I didn't even talk to you about any film or TV stuff that you've done.
No, just games.
Right.
But I'm excited. I get excited when I actually have heard of something that people reach out to me to. Yeah, I am playing woodwinds on that score. Every episode has a combination of flute, clarinet, and duduk.
Oh, nice.
Double reeds.
Love that. Yeah.
So I'm very excited. I've been working on that with Freddie and company for however many months. And it's finally out next week.
So video games happened first, though, before film and TV?
Oh, compared to video games, there's barely any film or TV whatsoever. Those are just a couple outliers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been pretty much all video games and maybe a couple student projects and short films and everything.
Okay. There's still I swear there's still like 8 or 10 things on that list, though.
Yeah, probably.
But it still does pale in comparison to the giant list of video game credits that you have. So, all right. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for the little addition.
Well, that's it. Yeah.